Hi everybody, dear artist friends, creative, wonderful people. I'm so happy to be here with you today, and I want to share something very special to me, which is drawing. I have worked for so many years in various arts and crafts and various media, both 2D and 3D, and of all of those, the one that I have loved the most is drawing, just with a simple old pencil and piece of paper. Over those years, I have developed a method for my drawing when I'm trying to draw when I say drawing for these purposes, I'm talking about a drawing as a finished piece of art where the medium is graphite, as opposed to drawing where you're working on planning a painting or other piece of art and you're doing some sketching. I'm talking here about drawing as a finished piece of art with the wonderful medium of graphite. So what I'm going to do today is talk about the supplies, which are minimal, but still worth talking about. And then I'm going to do a demo where we begin with a line drawing and take it through to the finished drawing. And there's an accompanying PDF which has all the information in it, including a line drawing so that you can draw along with me. So what I'm about to show you is the drawing we do in the video, but I've taken it a little further, and here it is, drawing of a sparrow. And this is an example of, I guess you could say, using drawing as the finished medium, because really there's not much else in it other than the framing color and so on. But this also shows how you can use a drawing in other ways than just the drawing. You can use drawings as elements in collage or mixed media. And this one's done. I just attached the paper to a piece of 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard, MDF. First painted this background and then put the bird on and antiqued it a little bit with some tea and some alcohol inks and so on, and just really had fun with it. So anyway, I am very excited to share drawing with you. I am drawn to draw, and I think many of you who are watching this are also drawn to draw, and others of you are just thinking about it or just starting. So I hope wherever you are in that journey, this will encourage you either to get started or keep going. Okay, hope you enjoy this. Take care. Bye-bye. So, I'm glad you're here with me to explore drawing and hopefully get inspired even more than you already are about this wonderful medium. And let's start with the supplies. First of all, I want to tell you that this is as I've said before, this is a very accessible medium. And all you really need is a pencil, an eraser. Of course, there's one on the end of the pencil, but I find this type works better. And paper, something as simple as copy paper. And there you go. Draw. That's supposed to be a butterfly. Anyway, those are the fundamentals: paper, pencil, eraser. But let me tell you, or let me show you the supplies that I use, which are a little more than what I just showed you. However, it's still not much at all. You can spend a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of time shopping, a lot of money buying different pencils and pencil sets and this, that, and the other, but you really just don't need it. Here's what I use, and here's what I find that I need. First of all, let's talk about the pencils. So unlike this one that I just showed you, and a lot of drawing pencils that are actually the wood casing with around the lead, I prefer mechanical pencils, and I prefer them mainly because I don't have to sharpen lead. I don't like sharpening the leads. So I buy the pencils and I buy the leads, and these are refillable, and off you go. So it sounds simple, and it is, but it's just a little more complicated than that, because there are a couple qualities about the leads, and one is the thickness. So these pencils, they come manufactured to hold a certain thickness of lead. And those thicknesses are 0.3 millimeter, 0.5 millimeter, 0.7, and 0.9. All I ever use is 0.5, except occasionally, very occasionally, I use a 0.3, which is very small. So like for drawing little whiskers on tiny creatures, but generally all I use is 0.5. And then I buy the different, the other quality besides the thickness of the lead is the hardness of the lead. So you may already know that leads are designated with letters and numbers like H, HB, 3B, 2B, 4H, and so on. And they all have an H or a B, or in one case, HB has both, but they all have H or B in their names. And H says it's a hard lead, which means a light mark. And B means it's a soft lead for a dark mark. And the higher the number with either the H or the B, either the lighter or the darker it is. So I have different pencils for my different hardnesses of leads, and I keep them consistent. So this pink one, I always fill it with H. The green one, I always fill it with HB. And this one, which I have a little label on, I fill it with 2B. I also have a pencil with 3B and one with 4B leads, but I don't use those very often. So the H, the lightest. So there's H. Oops. HB. 2B. And I'm trying to use the same kind of pressure. So very hard pressure. There's the 2B. HB. And H. It is useful to have these different darknesses or lightnesses of leads to use at various phases in your drawing. So as we'll see when I get to the demo, I always start with the H. By the way, the other thing I didn't say about H versus B is that the harder leads are more likely to incise or make an indentation in your paper. So that's pretty much it for pencils. You can get started with a regular pencil like this, or if you want to go a little further and you choose mechanical pencils, just get 3 mechanical pencils. I would start with 0.5 thickness, or you could go 0.7. I like 0.5. And then get your 3 different hardnesses of leads, H, HB, and 2B. And I would say you're really well outfitted at that point as far as pencils go. Now, of course, erasers are so important. And I actually have 2 types of erasers. There's a kneaded eraser, and then I have vinyl erasers. I don't use gum erasers. I don't use pink pearls. I think both of those are kind of crumbly when you try to erase, and they're sort of messy. So this is a click eraser. I have this block eraser, but I hardly ever use it. The click eraser really is enough for me. And it's just, the click means it just extends and retracts the eraser. Very nice. They're available pretty much anywhere you would buy school supplies, as are these. Then these 2 little guys, these are by Tombow. They're Mono Zero erasers by Tombow, and they're quite small, as you can see. So they're great for detail work. This one is round, obviously, and this one is rectangular, so you can go along that edge as well. And then the kneaded eraser. The kneaded eraser is useful for picking up excess graphite. So with these, you're going to actually clean off a spot. With this one, you're going to like I said, pick up some lead. So let's suppose you have those lines. Let's say those are the lines that you transferred in your drawing, although I don't know what the drawing would have been in that case. And they're pretty heavy, and you want to start with your H layer. So these lines, you don't want them that heavy, and you can just dab it with the eraser, the kneaded eraser, and it'll pick it up. And you can see it on the eraser there. So that's what you do with a kneaded eraser. You don't do that. The kneaded eraser you can mold into pretty tiny little things and dab that way. Anyway, so these are the erasers I use. I typically don't use that one. Okay, so we've covered pencils, erasers, paper. I have 3 papers that I really like. And there's more information about paper in the accompanying PDF, but basically what I look at the paper is what medium it will work well with it and how heavy the paper is. So typically I like to use mixed media paper because I never know when I start working on a drawing if in the end I'm going to want to put watercolor or maybe transparent acrylic washes over it. So I want the paper heavy enough and also engineered to work with water media as well as pencil. So the 2 mixed media papers I use are this Kaaren mixed media. It's fairly lightweight. It's only 98 pounds, but it's a good paper, and it has a nice smooth vellum finish. The one I use most often is Strathmore Mixed Media Series 400, and this is heavy. This is 184 pound, or basically almost twice the weight of the Kaaren. And it's really nice to draw on. It has a smooth vellum surface as well as the Kaaren, and it's very heavy. It's not going to warp or anything if you decide to put water media over it later. And then this is a drawing paper as opposed to a mixed media paper. It's by Legion Stonehenge. It comes in white, it comes in warm white, and it comes in an assortment which are basically grays and buffs and beiges and stuff like that. These other 2, the mixed media papers, only come in white. I will use this when I'm pretty sure I'm only going to draw, that I'm not going to do anything else. And this supposedly has a medium texture, but it feels very similar to the Kaaren, which says it's a vellum. Oh no, sorry, this says medium grain. Yes, okay. These 2 are both medium. This is his vellum. But any of them, you know, I use them interchangeably. So some other things I use occasionally. If I want darker in a few areas that I have with the pencil, I might use a very thin archival, water-resistant, waterproof pigment liner. Micron is one brand, and by very fine I mean 0.01, and this one is sepia. I really love the sepia. And this is a Statler, and it's black, I think. Yeah, black. So if you just want to go a little darker than that dark 2B, you can either use a 3B pencil or one of these. And comparing the 2, I really like the sepia, which I can't find in the Statler. However, I'm more... I feel more comfortable with the Statler being actually water resistant than the Micron. Another thing I might use is a stylus. I can use a stylus when I'm transferring a drawing to my paper, or I can incise lines with it and then when you go over it, it skips over those incised marks. So you have white lines that were scratched into the paper. So that's kind of handy, although I don't use it very much. And then the other thing, sometimes you want to, one of the problems with pencil, but also one of the nice things with pencil, depending on how you do it and where you do it, is that it smudges. So like, you can fill in a background area with little squiggles. And then use either a cotton pad or a Q-tip if your area is small, and blur it. Now if you have a cotton pad that you use over and over again, you tend to get graphite on it. And when you blur, you're also transferring some of the graphite from the pad to the paper. You can see there, that's just what came off the pad. But it makes a nice background that's kind of solid, but not totally solid. And you can go over it again and again and again if you want to keep getting it darker. And I would rather go over it several times and smudge each layer than try and put one real dark layer down and then smudge it. So that's that. Tools and supplies, not much to it at all. Oh, one more thing. So as I mentioned, pencil smudges. And sometimes you want it to do that, and sometimes you don't want it to do that. And if you don't want it to smudge, you need to fix it. And I always use this Krylon workable fixative if that's what I want to do. So if I were to, let me show you something. If I were to have this little smudged area, and then maybe want to have some white, I can erase that back. And then I would spray it, which you should do outside because these fumes are not good. And when it dries, you cannot erase this. So you can do some work, spray it with fixative, let it dry, and then do some more work and spray it with fixative again. So it's, and also if you want in the end to go over your drawing with any water media, you can't use watercolor because watercolor won't stick to this fixative. But if you want to use transparent acrylic, then you fix it and you can work over it. So it's really nice. That's it for the supplies. And for the rest of this, we're just going to do a demo. And I'm going to show you some techniques with the pencil, and hopefully you will enjoy it and either get inspired to start drawing or be even more enthusiastic than you already are about your drawing. Okay, so we'll be back in a minute. Okay, we are ready to draw. So what I have here in front of me is my piece of paper, a piece of drawing paper. Or actually, this is the mixed media paper. And it's taped to a board. It's good to have a hard, even surface under your paper when you're drawing. Your lines are crisper that way. And I have transferred the design, although you probably can barely see it because it's so light. I've transferred the design to the paper. And the way I did that was I traced my line drawing onto tracing paper, turned it over, scribbled over the lines, turned it back over, taped it down, and then used a stylus to, or you could use a ballpoint pen to go over all these lines. And that transfers the graphite from the back of the tracing onto your paper. And so with that, we can remove it now and put that aside. And we're ready to start our actual drawing. So, as I explained in the PDF, I like to draw in layers, building up from lighter to darker. And I don't want my drawing my initial line drawing to be very dark on this page because this whole first layer is going to be light. But I do need it dark enough to see it, and I have it that way. So ordinarily I would have some sort of a reference that I was working from. You know, I have the basic lines of the main feathers in and so on, but I don't have all the details. And sometimes the marking, we're doing a bird obviously, the markings on a bird can be very intricate. And so it helps to have a photo of that type of bird in front of you. And of course, you always have to be careful about copyright issues, but there are plenty of copyright-free images available on the internet. So what I have in front of me to look at is this drawing that I did and used in this collage. It's in a set of three, a series of three, but I'm going to work from my drawing rather than from a photo. And you will see me probably turning my page as I work. Typically with an animal, I start with the eye, and it's just a habit that I got into a long time ago. And it's sort of a, I don't know if I really want to call it a superstition, but to me, when I have the eye in, the animal is actually there and is able to communicate with me, advise me, whatever, as I work. So I had transferred the outline of the eyeball, and I'm working, I drew first the, drew around what was going to be the highlight. And I'm avoiding drawing over that highlight. So I like to have it a little darker at the top of the eyeball and then lighter down towards the bottom, because that would be a secondary highlight. So I like to start with the eye, and then in this case I think I would just move on to the beak. And initially I'm just using my pencil to strengthen the outlines. So there's the beak of this little guy, and the top one hangs over the bottom one a little bit. He's got a bit of an overbite. It's a fairly light beak, so I'm just going to put a little bit of shading on the bottom. I left that little light edge. Going to also put some shading on the top of the bill, beak, but not right at the very top. So you notice that this that I just put in is lighter than these other lines, and that's simply because I'm pressing less to get it lighter. So now, coming over the top of the head, and I'm using small strokes. Now, I'm just using strokes, which ordinarily I would use to put fur in. The bird actually obviously does not have fur, it has feathers, but they're way too little to draw little tiny feathers, so I just draw strokes. And I do keep my strokes going in the direction that a feather would be growing, so they'd be growing up from around the bill and up over the head. Now there's a little light part, little light patch right in there that I'm going to leave untouched. And there's this little darker area here. And you know, unless you're doing actually a scientific study type painting or drawing of this bird, you don't really have to be super duper concerned about accuracy of the markings and so on. It's nice, but you know, you can also use your imagination. There goes the cat. I'm hoping he's going to leave us alone here. We'll see. We may have the tail in the corner of the frame. So I am leaving a little white space under the eye and bringing out some, quote, feathered strokes from there. Again, going in the direction that I think that the feathers would be growing there. And this is all our medium tone. So just more strokes with kind of a light hand. And then we have this light area and a very, very light area underneath, and I'm barely touching the paper with my pencil. Okay, let's turn them back around. So the area under the beak is dark. He has a little bib. And I'm not drawing that line there. I'm creating the line by pulling little strokes out from along the under edge. And I'm not putting this area in solid because it's very slightly speckled. It's pretty dark, but it's kind of slightly speckled. And then like so. His chin, this might be coming out a little bit too far, and I want to leave some white area there. So you can see how that little mini eraser is very helpful. So this area is light. We have, this is the kind of a fold of where the neck kind of folds over the chest. So this is not actually a different color. This is a shadow. But we do have darker color here on the chest, coming down part way, like so. So since we're working without color, we are using value to indicate a couple of different things. One would be shadows versus highlights, and the other would be the different values of different colors. We all know that some colors are darker in value than others. Like, doesn't matter how much yellow paint you keep putting on something, it's still not going to be very dark, because yellow has a kind of a natural value that is light. Just darkening up the edge of the head with a little more pressure there. Now, on to the back where the feathers are. First of all, I'm going to outline these feathers a little darker, so hopefully you can see them. Now, a scientific rendering would be concerned about how many feathers there are in the different parts of the wing, and I'm not really worried about that. But I do know that there are basically two sections that we're seeing here. The wings are like our arms, and they have three sections. So the hand is the furthest part on the wing, and those are the longest feathers. And then there's another group here, and another group here, and when the wing is bent, this is laying over this, and this is laying over that. So that's kind of why they look like they're in three sections, because they are in three sections. But then there are some little feathers in the front here that kind of tuck over and under. All right, and our final ones are way back here. And then this is his little, this here is kind of the rump. And then we've got the tail. So we're looking at the underside of the tail. And maybe we're not going to see that much in terms of individual feathers. Okay, so let's just come around and darken this up a little bit, this edge. This is fluffy part of the bird. Likewise on the, there's a fluffy part laying over, he's kind of crouched down, and fluffy part of his belly's laying over these feet. We have a branch. Just add a little texture to. So on this first layer, this H layer with the hardest pencil, what I'm aiming for is just to begin establishing, I guess you'd say, all the parts of this drawing. So the shape of the bird, the highlights and shadows, the lines which indicate the shape, and also the textures, the different textures. Can't always talk and draw at the same time, but this isn't too hard because I've got my drawing here to guide me. By the way, so we started with a line drawing, and how you get that line drawing is a different subject, not really in the scope of this particular lesson, but you can draw the line drawing working from references. You can trace something, and there's a whole lot to actually creating the line drawing through drawing, because there we're talking about the kind of drawing where you are working to create a likeness and from nothing. Like we're working to create a likeness here, but we already have our guide, which is our line drawing. So anyway, that how you draw to create a likeness is different subject and outside of the scope of what we're working on now. However, I guess this would be a good time to show you. I did write a book back in 2007 about sketching animals. It's out of print now, but it is available sometimes as a used book on Amazon. So this really goes into a lot of detail about how you create a likeness. In these cases, I'm creating a likeness from photographs. Isn't she cute? Anyway, there she is. Anyway, sorry, kind of got sidetracked there. Anyway, so this is one resource that you might be able to find and might be interested in for the creating a likeness part of drawing, well as it covers what we're doing here too. All right, now this part, there's a light area, light ring around the back here, which connects with this fold that is hanging over the chest. And then this area is sort of a mid-tone, or lighter than that actually. But it's toned, and I'm using very light pressure on my pencil to get this light area. And I'm going to be even lighter down here in the rest of the feathers. And let's see, what do I want to do? I see there's some little kind of randomish markings up in here in this area of the body. I guess you could say this is the shoulder. So I'm just going to put some little darker markings in here and there. So again, I'm pulling strokes away from this edge rather than necessarily just drawing another line there. And let's put, I want to put some more here. Now, here's a good area or a good place to show you drawing with your eraser. And actually I need just a little more. Okay, here we go. There's little feathers, that light colored feathers that fluff back over this area. And I can just create those by erasing around them, and then to emphasize them, I'll just add a little more color, quote color, gray, around them. There you go. And we may come back and do that some more later. All right, let's add some. Now these are just texture lines. They are showing texture just by picking up on, or oops, that one ended up pretty dark. By we're really kind of drawing the shadows of little tiny feathers that are along here. And if I draw a little curved line, it looks even more like feathers. And then, towards maybe about here, it's starting to get darker, both because of shadow and probably color. It's probably more of a, or could be more of a buff color back here than the very light of the chest. But what was I trying? I was trying to think of what to say. Oh, I'm going to leave this very little butt stuff really light, but I'm going to add some darkness next to it, which of course brings it out. And then I'm imagining that that the tail's curving over like this, and that these two light feathers are on the top, and where I'm putting more darkness here is the shadow of the underside of the feather. Okay, so already we're doing pretty good here. Now on the feet, I'm just going to add a few texture lines. The feet look like they have little, almost like they have little rings around them. And that's what I'm putting in. Okay, so I don't think we need to do anything more with our H pencil. So there's the H layer. Okay, so we can put our H pencil aside and get out our 2B. This is the next darker one, but we're not totally into the B pencils yet. The B's are the soft. So I'm just doing what I did before, basically. Starting with the eye, leaving the highlight, having a very light secondary highlight. And now I'm adding just tiny little dark strokes. And I'm going to put the corner of the eye in there. Now I want the, there's some depth in the area between the upper beak and the lower beak. So deepen that area, widen it a little bit, put a little color on the bottom so that, but leaving just this little space of light. We got the little space of light along the edge of the top beak, but I'm going to deepen around it and maybe deepen the tip a little bit. There we go. But we've got a highlight on the top of his top beak. So this area, I have a couple little feathers sticking out here. This area is vertical, curving up towards flat on the top of his head. So we're going to have, this is going to be darker than the top because of that. It could also be because, depending on the bird you're drawing, it could also just be because of the marking. Some of them have a dark area above the beak. And it looks like we've got some dark coming in here too, and then here. So we can have our outline of the bird darker too. And let's see here. I've deviated from the markings on what I'm using as my model, but it doesn't matter because I'm really not trying to create a realist, or I want it to look like a bird, and I want it to be recognizable as a sparrow, but it doesn't need to be, oh, it's a chipping sparrow or it's some other kind of sparrow. So I'm going to get darker in here. And these little lines can separate these little white feathers that are curving up from the side of the chest over this area. So something kind of interesting about the pencil, or something I find really interesting about the pencil, is all you're ever doing is making a little tiny line, like so. But with enough of those lines placed where they need to be, you end up creating a likeness of your subject, bird, whatever it may be. So now I'm going to darken between these feathers. And I'd like to see little darkness at the end of them. Creating a light edge But these, I think I'll keep these dark. I'm sorry, light. But I think I'll darken these a little. Again, giving a light edge. And you see that I'm building up my drawing with a bunch of lines, but you see that the lines I'm drawing, the direction of them is critical to forming the drawing. So like when I wanted to leave this little white area, my strokes were little curved areas around it like that. Let's leave a white edge on these also. Now you notice that the feathers are overlapping each other, so on this feather there's no light edge on this side because it's tucked under that other feather. And there. There. Okay, liking that. I think what am I going to do on the tail here? I think I want to make the tail feathers dark. And I'm going to have a white edge separating them. And what else? Let's do a shadow on the branch under the bird, and that'll help to bring out the light chest. Just some more texture lines on this branch and darker at the bottom. All right, let's see, let's do a little more in here. And I'm doing little feathery strokes. For texture. Like more depth here. It's just, it's a matter of how much you're going to depend on your reference and how much you're going to just depend on your own judgment as you go. And you reach a point where the drawing is what guides you rather than the reference. So you're looking at the drawing and saying, okay, what do I need to see that I don't see? And then or what do I see that I don't want to see? And then you take it out. So I'm going to soften up this. There's smudging. Useful. What else? Let's see. Oh, here's a part of the branch between those two toes. that I missed. This can certainly be darker in here. I want these wing feathers to be casting a little area of shadow on the side. Alrighty. I think that's good for layer 2. And now we're going to switch away from our HB pencil to our 2B. And this one is darker yet. Once again in the eye. The mouth. I think so. Now I'm looking for where are the darkest parts. The white ring, just tone that white ring above his eye down a little bit. And you know, I can't tell you the reason for it. I look at it and I think, well, that should be a little, I shouldn't have such a solid white ring all around the eye, because in fact this part up here may very well be in shadow with the part above his eye, his eyebrow maybe sticking out a little bit over the eyeball. Now I'd like to have a clearer, see, there's a little definition between this bottom beak and his body, so I darken that up a little bit. And I'm going to maybe have this come. Now, this wouldn't have to be with this dark pencil, but so I'm using lighter pressure because I don't really need it to be as dark as I can get it with this pencil. But over in the center area, yes, I do want it darker. And in fact, I think I want it really dark right there. And I think I'd like it really dark the top of this area. I think sometimes these tiny little feather strokes really help. When I first got started in art, mostly what I was drawing was birds. And I'll tell you something really that I find really interesting about birds. And in fact, I have another book, How to Draw Birds in Colored Pencil. Anyway, the birds' skeletons have a couple of important differences from ours. One is that their spines are fused between the shoulder and the hip. So the shoulder is where the wings attach, since the wings are analogous to our arms. And then the hips, of course, are where the legs attach to the spine, way up in there somewhere. So they're fused. They cannot move. There's no flexibility in their spine between shoulder and hip. And you know, with people, we have a lot of flexibility. We'll stand with arms akimbo, one hip up, one hip down. They cannot do that. They cannot do that at all. But what they can do, what they have that we don't have, is this immense amount of flexibility in their necks. So mammals have 7 or 8 vertebrae in their neck. And of course, each vertebrae can move independently of the other, so we have, 7 or 8 bones that can move independently of each other, so we can twist our neck in certain ways. Birds have anywhere from 11 to, I think it's 23 vertebrae in their necks. They can do incredible things. I mean, you've seen owls. Owls can turn their heads almost 180 degrees. You've seen swans making the most graceful curves with their necks. They have, it always amazed me how with very little, especially compared with us, very little ability to communicate with body language through the movements of their spines, hips, and shoulders, they can still create so much body language just with their heads and their necks. I find it, like I said, really amazing and wonderful. I think I don't like the end of that. I would like a different shape. It was rounded, but this seems not important, but I like it more angular there. Okay. What else? Maybe in here. Again, just looking for darkest darks. Or areas that I want to add more detail, and I will use a lighter pressure with this pencil. A few more of those fluffies. And then separating those fluffies from each other. Okay, what else? Going back to a slightly, the HB, very light pressure. I'm deepening the back of that ring a little bit. And I think I need to deepen the bottom part of this belly where it's curving under and getting a shadow. Some strokes in here to indicate the longer fluff. There would be maybe some darker there. I'm gonna smudge it just a little bit. The shadow of the body on the upper part of the leg and on these. And all right, I think that's pretty good. I would like to show you just one more thing, which is creating some smudge in the background. So I've got my H pencil, and I want to put a little more some background in against the light belly. So I'm just doing little swirlies very lightly. And in here, back here. Under here. Okay. So, let's sign it. And date it. All right, there we are with our bird, progressing from layer to layer, and leaving lights alone as we need to, and getting the darks darker and darker and darker as we go. And so in that way we build up value contrast, and the value contrast is very important to our drawing. Makes it come alive. So now, sorry, I am a fusser. I always like to just keep fussing. Okay, enough. Now, the final step would be to spray it with fixative so that nothing's going to smudge any of it. We're done smudging. And I use this Krylon workable fixative. Protects pencil, pastel, and chalk, prevents smudging and wrinkling, allows easy rework, acid-free, archival safe. So I will go do that. And after I'm done with that, I let it dry. It doesn't have to dry that long, but maybe half an hour. And then if I want, I can, oddly enough, varnish this. So I just want to show you, this drawing is part of a collage. And after I drew this on a little piece of paper, I sprayed it with the fixative. I ripped it out close to the bird. You can see the edge of it probably. And then I just used it in my collage, and I could do that because the fixative had fixed that pencil, and I could go and do other things over it. Like all I did over it here was, there's a little bit of paint up in here, but mainly just, not varnish, what's it called? Matte medium, which is what I always coat my collages with. Anyway, so you can do something like this with the drawing, or have your drawing just stand like this. You could, once you spray it, you could kind of antique the edges with tea bag or whatever, and really do quite a lot beyond this. But this, it's so fun. It doesn't take that long. As with everything else, it's a matter of practice. But what I love about it is I don't have to be sitting here at my work table. I can, if I'm waiting to pick up my granddaughter in the car, I can pack my pencils in my handy little bag, and off I go. And you know, it requires so few supplies and materials, and none of them are really messy, that you can just pretty much go anywhere with it. So I hope that this has inspired you. If you're not doing drawing now, I hope it's inspired you to start. And if you are already doing drawing, I hope it encourages you to continue. Oh look, I wanted to get that retrieve that little light patch there with my eraser. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for watching, and blessings on your art journeys. Bye-bye.